typically, unless there is some sort of catastrophic side effect that is identified as the intervention goes to a larger population, that just basically stays as is until something new comes along to replace it. But I think that sort of static approach to access to new therapies and to the reimbursement of new therapies may now start. Maybe it's starting to be displaced with this sort of dynamic view of how do you manage a formulary to ensure that you always have the optimal sort of combination of interventions. Is that something that we should be looking forward to, or that we would expect to sort of displace the traditional approach to market access decision making?
I think for sure, that is definitely where we are trying to go, and I'm sure Brian can comment on like life cycle HTA, and there's a lot that is happening, right? As again, CADIT has already been evolving into sort of thinking about time limited recommendations, where you kind of issue a recommendation, but then you're going to go back and look at the sort of bigger trial data later to sort of say, okay, does our recommendation still stand, or what is sort of more detailed analysis on potential cost effectiveness based on more data. um, I, having actually worked at the provincial drug programs too, even after something is funded, we did a lot of work to look at whether, was it being used appropriately? Should we change maybe the funding criteria or how it's listed? And, the price of a drug is one thing, but, as we've all been hearing about Ozempic, for example, let's say. And so it's like, well, uh, there's price and then there's volume, right? And so sometimes if you can really limit the drug use to really the right population, or sort of less a limited subgroup or whatnot, then it's possible that you can pay a bit higher price. Maybe it is more cost effective in those populations. And then if you have a situation where you have extremely high utilization, where I don't know that a lot of them, a lot of patients are potentially using it sort of in the best way possible, the cost could be dramatic and the budget impact could be dramatic, right? And so definitely looking at how a drug is being utilized in the real world, and and potentially sort of being able to be more agile about pricing and agreements and thresholds, all of that is going to have a big impact on how you manage sustainability of drug budget.
And not to put words in your mouth, but that takes data, right? That takes like real time, real world data at your fingertips, to be able to do that in an easy way.
Yeah, and Costas, I think we have moved both in the regulatory science as well as in the HTA. We've moved from that point in time decision to more of what they refer to as a rolling review or a life cycle assessment of the product. And to do that, certainly we have to have data across the life cycle. We do need to make a decision when that product is sent to an HTA body or to a regulator. A decision or a recommendation does need to be made at that point in time based on whatever evidence we have. I know for a fact that if we received a new drug application today based on the evidence that we used to think we needed to make these decisions, we'd be saying no to a lot of these new drugs just because of the accelerated pathways, the lack of evidence, the uncertainty, both in the value as well as the clinical and safety aspects of that new drug. So that's why we have adopted this life cycle approach to HTA. I co-led an international task force to develop a new definition for health technology assessment in around 2018, and we did publish that new definition. And it had to be multidisciplinary, it had to be scientific, it needed to assess the value of a technology across that life cycle, and it needed to inform policy or decision making.